we're heading for a very severe recession. I just want to kind of explain briefly the dynamics of that. So the Fed's raising interest rates. We know that they started, it wasn't that long ago, but March 1st, 2022, the Fed policy rate was zero. It was 0%. Today, it's 4.5%. So that's 4.5% in about 8 or 9 months. People remember Paul Volcker. Oh, Paul Volcker raised interest rates to 20%. Well, he did, but so far Powell hasn't raised them as high. Jay Powell, the chairman of the Fed, hasn't raised them as high, but he's raised them fast. I mean, even when Volcker was working his way to 20%, it took 3 years, from 1979 to 1982. And Jay Powell has done this in, like I say, eight or 9 months. So that's a very rapid, very steep path. They started with baby steps, 25 basis points last March, and then 50 basis points following that, but then 4 hikes in a row, 75 basis points each. And the most recent one, just a few days ago, was 50 basis points, but got us up to 4.5%. So what's going on? So I want to talk about 3 views of the world. I'll be brief. The first is Jay Powell's view. What is Powell's plan? What is Jay Powell doing? The second perspective is, what does the market think is going to happen? The market doesn't necessarily have to agree with Powell. And then the third thing is, what's really happening? That's the most important, because the market has it wrong too. So we'll do the Powell plan, the market view, and what's really going on. So Powell's plan is clear because he's told us 5 times. He's starting to worry that no one's listening, but he gave speeches August 26th in Jackson Hole, September 21st in Washington, D.C., November 2nd, again at Washington, D.C. at an FOMC meeting, November 30th at the Brookings Institution, and again on December 14th at an FOMC meeting in Washington. So that's 5 speeches. And he said the same thing all 5 times. He said inflation is job one. It's not that we don't care, but unemployment is going to go up. We're going to have a recession. He doesn't use the R word, by the way, but it's implicit in everything he says. We are going to have a recession. Unemployment is going up. And too bad. It was kind of too bad, because we got to get inflation under control. And so the Fed is in search of something that they call the terminal rate. What's the terminal rate? The terminal rate is a rate that's high enough to bring inflation down on its own without further hikes. So it doesn't have to be higher than inflation. It has to be high enough to cause inflation to come down to the Fed's goal of 2% without hiking more. And when they get there to that terminal rate, they'll sit tight. They call it the pause. And the pause could be a year. And Powell said this, again, this is right out of his script, to mid-2024 perhaps, before they actually cut rates. So Powell's in search of the terminal rate. By the way, if you said to me, hey, Jim, what's the terminal rate? I would answer truthfully. I would say, I don't know, but neither does Jay Powell. Jay Powell doesn't know what the terminal rate is. He's kind of saying, we'll know it when we see it, but we're not there yet, and we're going to keep going. And they have what they call the dots, silly name, but the members of the Board of Governors and the Federal Reserve Bank presidents give estimates, or their estimates of unemployment, inflation, growth, and interest rates for the next 3 years, and they put them as dots on the chart, so they call it the dots. And then Wall Street gets the dots. They do a central tendency and regressions and all this stuff. By the way, one of the top Fed insiders, practically sits in Jay Powell's lap, and has all the way back to Bernanke and Yellen, told me personally, he said, the inside the Fed, they regard the dots as a joke. They're not better than guesses. Their forecasting ability is dismal. You or I would have better forecasts, and they wish they could get out of it, but they don't know how. So that's the truth. But the problem is, Wall Street and the financial media and the talking heads on CNBC, they want to talk about the dots, and it does affect market behavior. So even though it's a joke, even though the forecasts are terrible, you have to pay attention, because it affects the markets. And if you're affecting the markets, you're on the wrong side, you're going to get run over. So I look at the dots not because I put weight on them as predictive analytic tools, but because the market pays attention, so we have to pay attention. So the dots say that the terminal rate is going to be approximately 5.1%. They're not going to have a 0.1%. So 5.25 is a good estimate. That 5.25 is your best guess as to what the Fed thinks the terminal rate is, because that's what they said in the dots. So we're 4.5 now. So how do you get from 4.5 to 5.25? Well, it's 3 25 basis point hikes. That would be February 1st. The one after that is March 22nd. And the one after that is early May. I'm not sure the exact, May 3rd or 4th. I think it's May 3rd. So you're going to see more rate hikes, 25 basis points each, February 1st, March 22nd, and May 3rd. That's going to get you to 5.25. At that point, they should say, okay, we're at the terminal rate. We'll sit tight and let inflation come down. So that's what Powell's going to do. Here's what the market says. Okay, so that's the Powell plan. We already know it. The market says, hey, inflation is already coming down. Well, it is. That's actually true. Inflation peaked on a year-over-year basis. Monthly report calculated year-over-year was 9.1% in June, but it's come down to from the high 8s, mid 8s, low 8s, 7.7, 7.1. Now, 7.1 is still high. Don't get me wrong. Inflation is still high, too high. I buy gas and shop for groceries just like everybody else, so it's still too high. But it has come down from 9.1% to 7.1% in the last 5 months. And so the market says, hey, you did it. You're already there. Inflation is coming down. Why don't you stop? And by the way, you're going to get the memo, maybe in February or sometime soon, you're going to get the message. The economy is going to be slowing down. Inflation is going to be coming down. You're going to hit the pause button early, meaning maybe as early as February. And then you're going to cut rates. This is the famous pivot. Whenever you hear of the Fed pivot, that's when the Fed turns around and starts cutting rates instead of raising them. And that'll be just in time, and growth will slow, but it won't be too bad. And we'll come in for a soft landing. And this is the Goldilocks scenario. So again, typical Wall Street, get the pom-poms out. The Fed's going to cut rates by March, and so buy stocks. That's all Wall Street knows is buy stocks. So that's Wall Street's version. So there's the Powell plan and then Wall Street's version. Here's the reality. There is a chance that we are already at the terminal rate. But the conundrum is inflation coming down because the Fed is still hiking, or is the inflation coming down because they're at the terminal rate? Well, we don't know. It's kind of hard to sort those things out. Powell would say, yeah, it's coming down. I know that, of course, but it's because I'm hiking and I'm going to keep doing it. My view is, no, you actually did it. It's mission accomplished. You just don't know it. You're fighting. You're like the Japanese in the caves fighting 4 years after the end of World War II. I mean, you're still raising rates, and you already got to where you want to go. That means, as usual, they're going to screw it up. They're going to blunder. They're going to go too far, and it's not going to be a mild recession. It's not going to be Goldilocks. In this version, Goldilocks gets eaten by the bears. In other words, you're going to throw this economy into a very deep recession because you're going to go too far, as usual, and you're not going to know it until too late. By the time you realize it's mission accomplished, you will have gone too far, too long. Rates are going to be too high, and it's not going to be a soft landing. It's going to be